Okay, so let's take a look at what's inside this topic. Okay, so first we'll be talking about something called the restrictions. Okay, restrictions means something you cannot do, right? So for example, you are restricted to drive until you have a license, right? That's a restriction on driving. And then after we talked about restrictions, the next page is simplifying. Okay, how to simplify a fraction. Rational is a fraction. And then part C, operation. So operation includes the four operation. Multiply and divide, we'll learn it together, right? They're similar. And then we'll be learning how to do add and subtract. Page 44, add and subtract, okay? And then after that, we'll learn how to solve an equation that has fraction inside, rational equations. So to solve equation means you to find the x, right? And an x usually represents something you want to find. And that is gonna help us to solve some word problem. So our ultimate goal is to figure out the answer for the word problem. Okay, so last part is word problem. Oh, we were still missing Ivy. Ivy just got in. Oh, forgot. Okay. Okay, Ivy. Ivy, are you there?
Oh, yes. Oh my God.
Did you forget the class?
I wake up so late.
Okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I forgot to call you too. Okay. So we are on book 2 now, okay? You have book 2?
I think I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we are on page 38. We are doing rational expression first.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So we'll continue. So this part, restriction. First, let's understand what's a rational expression. Okay. The key word is rational. When we talked about real numbers, right? We have rational number, irrational number. So they are different groups of numbers. Does anybody know what's a rational number? What's an irrational number? What's the definition? Anyone? Rational and irrational numbers. Has anyone heard of those two terms? Evan, have you heard of it? Rational.
Yeah, I
Huh?
just don't know the definition for it.
Okay. Do you know how to tell between whether the number is rational or irrational?
I forgot how to tell.
Okay. Anyone else want to help out? Angela?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it means.
Okay, it's okay. Then then let's write it down. Okay, rational means it can be written as a fraction. Okay, if it's a rational number, for example, like 2.5, I can write it as 2.5, right? I can rewrite it as a fraction. Then we call that a rational number. So over here, rational expression means it's an expression that's written in fraction form, okay? So let's write this down over here. Rational means written as fraction. Okay, so fraction, you have something on the top, something at the bottom, okay? So before it's just numbers. Now we have variable, so it's an expression. So let's look at the definition here. If numerator and denominator are both polynomials, okay? Numerator and denominator, they are both polynomial, then we call that it's an rational expression. And restriction means they are the values that will make the expression undefined. Okay, how do you make a fraction undefined? This one I think you guys should know. Right? When will a fraction be undefined? What kind of restriction? Yeah.
When it's something divided by 0.
Very good. Okay. We can never divide by 0. Okay. So undefined means when denominator, right, becomes 0, so equal to 0. We cannot have that happen. Okay. Because dividing means if you put into word problem, okay, one word we can say is to share, right? For example, you have 10 people, right? 10 chocolates, right? 10 chocolates. You want to share, right? So you divide by 2 people, right? Share with 2 people, 2 friends. So each of your friends will get 5 chocolate, right? 5 each. 5 each. Now, if I write it as 10 divided by 0, and you want to get an answer, then it's impossible. You are saying, it's like saying, I have 10 chocolate, I want to share with no one. And how many does each one get, right? Because the answer means how many does each one get, but there's no one there. So your answer and your question doesn't, like, they contradict each other, right? You are sharing, but then at the same time, there's no one, right? So we never have denominator as 0. So this is one of the way you can explain, okay? So restriction means the value, if you plug it in, it will make the denominator become 0. Then that's the number we don't want to have, okay? So let's look at the expression here. The first expression here, state any restriction on the variable, okay? So something you don't want to use for the variable. Variable means it can be any value you want to use. So because it will make it become 0 in the denominator, okay? So we should focus on the denominator. So the denominator, we need to look at parts by parts, okay, or factors. So let's review, because we just finished factoring, right? So let's write down factor means, okay, factors. They are separated by multiplying, right? For example, I think you should remember, right? Factor, we usually write it like this, brackets next to each other, right? So each of them, they are factors, right? Factors. So this is just a quick recap, okay? So we want to focus on our denominator here, okay? So look at the denominator and let's pull it out. In the denominator, we have 10, right? Multiplied by x cubed. Okay, hold on. And then multiplied by y, multiplied by z squared. So it has 4 factors. We want to make sure not one of them, right? Not any of them, it becomes 0. Okay, so of course for the first one, 10 can never be 0, right? Because it's constant, it will stay there. So now you look at the next one. If x becomes 0, then x to the cube will be 0, right? So everything multiplied together will be 0. So you cannot have x equal to 0. Same thing with the next one, right? If y is 0, then the whole thing will become 0. So also y cannot be 0. Similar, z cannot be 0. Okay, so you cannot use these 3 numbers to plug it into the variable. Otherwise, it makes the denominator become 0, and that's undefined. Okay, so for this one, it has 3 restrictions. So when you write the restriction, you just write the letters. If they're all the same value, you just write X, Y, and then Z, and then cannot be 0. Okay, so here we're just writing out the restriction, that's all. So each of the factors has 1 restriction. Okay, you only need 1 restriction for each factor, and you need to identify which ones are factors. Okay, so let's look at another one. Okay, we'll go through these 3 questions. Actually, we'll do the first 2 together. I'll let you try some of the question at the bottom. Okay, so question B. So can anybody tell me how many factors are in the denominator? Anyone? How many factors are there?
3.
Yes, very good. Which 3?
3x and x plus 1.
Yeah, 3x and x plus. Okay, so this one is already factor for you, right? Remember, factors are separated by multiplying, right? So we have multiplying in between them. The x plus 1, these 2 are not factor, okay, because they're connected by plus. So you can say inside the x plus 1, there are 2 terms, okay, but you don't call them factors. They count as 1 factor, okay? So we need to get 1 restriction from each one. Let me erase this first. Okay, so once again, the 3, we don't care about that because it's not a variable, right? So no restriction from there. Restriction. Okay, and then now we need to make sure this one, write it down, cannot be 0, right? And then this one also cannot be 0. Because if the whole bracket becomes 0, then everything in the denominator, when they multiply, it will become 0. Right? Anything times a 0 will be 0. So from the bracket part, you cannot leave the answer like that. You need to isolate x. We need to do one more. So move the 1 to the right side. You get x cannot be -1. Okay, any questions so far? So your answer for the restriction is x cannot be 0, x cannot be -1. So this is the thing you box at the end. Okay, so you just need to identify which are the factors, and for each factors, you make it not equal to 0. Okay, so remember, it's not just x cannot be 0, it's the factor cannot be 0. Okay, does anyone have question? Okay, so I'll let you try it and we'll see if we have any trouble here. Okay, I'll pin down here. Not everything you need to do. Do the first 2. Okay, just the first 2. So when you finish 1A and B, please raise your hand. Okay, just A and B. So focus on the denominator. And write out the restriction. Okay, only one person finished. Please raise your hand if you're done. Is there anyone has no idea at all or got stuck? So if the factor has more than one term, you need to isolate the x. But if the factor only has one letter, then it's just not equal to 0, okay? So very straightforward there. Okay, we got 5 people done now. Anyone else? If you haven't finished yet, probably you have some trouble. Anyone want to ask a question?
For the x minus 3 on the first question,
Yeah.
what makes, like, if you look at the past question, it's x plus 1, so it isn't -1, but then x minus 3, I don't really get that part.
Okay, so think about the past question, okay? If I grab the -1, okay, and I plug it in to the x, what happens when it plus 1?
It's 1.
Eh? I plug -1 into the x.
Oh, then it's 0?
Yeah, it makes the bracket 0,
Negative,
right?
yeah.
So that's if the bracket becomes 0, then everything in the denominator will be 0. So that's why we said it cannot be -1. Otherwise, it will make the bracket 0. So you are looking for a number that will make the bracket becomes 0. Okay, so if you look at the question you are working on, what number will make this bracket become 0?
3.
Yeah, so x cannot be 3. Make sense?
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
you are not allowed to use 3 as x because it makes it undefined. Okay? Yeah, good. It's good that you guys ask questions, okay? Because your question might be other people's questions. Okay, and also it's faster, right? Faster to just ask your question instead of just trying to figure out by yourself. Okay, does anyone else have questions? Sometimes just little things not clear, and I'll try to explain a different way. Okay, Angela, Jiawen, and Marcus, how are you guys doing?
I was kind of confused on the 2 factors, but I'm okay now.
Okay. How about Marcus? You have questions?
No.
Okay, then can you tell me your answer for A?
I just put x and y can equal to 0.
X, okay, let me write down X and Y cannot be 0. Anything else?
Oh, and 3.
And the 3, both x and y cannot equal to 0 and 3.
Oh, no. I think 3 is on the edge. I'm not sure.
Okay. How about Angela? What's your answer like? Angela?
I got. Oh wait. X squared and y can't be 0 and x can't be 3.
Okay. X x squared y cannot be 0 and x cannot be 3. Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, it's okay. It's a first time, right? So we're gonna go over in detail. Anyone else has a different answer? Harry, what's yours look like?
Y cannot equal 0, x cannot equal 0 and 3.
Cannot equal to 0 and 3. Okay. So we have three ways of writing the restriction here. Anyone else want to add to that? Anyone else got different? Okay, so let's go over, okay? So I'll go over one more time how to approach this question, okay? So you first thing is to check how many factors there are. And factors, they are separated by multiplying, okay? So this one has 1, let me underline. Okay, 1 factor, right? 2, 3, 4, right? You have 4 things multiplying. Those are called factors. But then the 7 you can ignore, right? Because 7 is never gonna be 0. So now you look at the x squared. So x squared cannot be 0, right? You don't want that part to be 0. Y cannot be 0, right? The third factor. And then the last factor cannot be 0 either. But then when you write a restriction, you want to isolate the variable, right? So from the first one, if you want to isolate the x, you need to get rid of the square. So you will square root both sides. And square root of 0 is still 0. So you end up with x cannot be 0. Okay? And then the second one is already isolated, so we just keep that. But then the third one, we still need to isolate. So you get x cannot be 3. Okay? Move the 3 to the other side. So at the end, your restriction is x cannot be 0, y cannot be 0, x cannot be 3. And if you want to combine it together, I believe this one is the best one here. Okay? Let me erase the other one. Okay, the other ones are close. Okay? So if you use any of these values, right? The 0 for y, 0 for x, 0 for 3, if you plug it into the, it will make the denominator become 0, and which is undefined, right? We don't want that. That's why it's called restrictions. The values that you cannot use, okay? We call those restrictions. Okay, let's check answer for B now. Okay, what's your answer for B, Evan?
I got x can equal to 2 or negative 3.
2 or negative 3, like that. Is it? Evan?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Anyone else has a different answer?
I have 2x not equal to 1 and x not equal to negative 3.
2x cannot equal to 1 and x cannot equal to negative 3? Like that? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, Barry? Yeah.
X not equal to 1/2 and -3.
And -3, so put together. Okay, anyone else? Jiawen, how about you? What do you have? Jiawen, are you there? Jiawen. Jiawen, are you there?
Oh, hi.
Hi, where'd you go?
Oh, I was there, but I think I was on mute.
Oh, okay. So what's your answer like?
When I got x can equal to -3 or 0.
Oh, 0. Okay, x cannot equal to -3 and 0. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, let's check, okay? So first of all, Marcus, can you tell us how many factors are there in the denominator?
It needs to be 2.
Yeah, which two?
2x minus 1 and x plus 3.
Yeah, okay. So those are the two factors, okay? So you just make sure you don't want the factors to be 0. So this is your first step, okay? Identify how many factors there are. So there are 2, then you just make each one of them cannot be 0. After that, you want to make sure your restriction is only for the variable, right? So you need to isolate the x. So Angela, how do you isolate the x from here?
Oh, I added 1 on both
Yeah.
sides.
Add 1, right? 2x, write it down.
And then
2x
yeah.
cannot be 1, and then?
And then I divided 2 on both sides. Or yeah, I divided 2 on both sides.
So it will be x, what? And then
X equals 1/2.
cannot equal to 1
Oh
over 2.
yeah, cannot equal. Sorry.
Okay, because we are looking for restriction, right? Something you cannot use. Okay, for the second part, right, this one is the easy part. You just move the 3 over. So x cannot be -3. So there's no 0 here, okay? You only get 0 if the factor has just the variable alone, nothing attached to it, okay? Look, compare with the last question. So your restriction is just these two. Okay, so your answer should be this. Okay, let me erase the other ones. Okay, do you get it now? How to find restrictions? Because from now on, everything in this chapter, you need to write restrictions. Okay, this is your basic basic tool, right? Basic thing you need to know how to do. Find the restrictions. Because later on we're gonna do operations, right? Adding, subtracting, multiply, divide, and then you still need to write restriction for them at the end. Okay, so you need to know how to write restrictions. Can you raise your hand if you understand these two? It's your chance to ask me now if you still have any trouble here, okay? Brandon, Colin, Waylon, do you have questions for me for A and B? Brandon,
Yes.
do you have questions?
No. Sorry, I was
Okay.
just copying this down.
Okay, let me know. Okay, you can raise your hand when you're done, okay? Then we'll move on to question C. All right, good. So let's look at C now. Even though it has more letters, right? More letters, but the rule is the same, okay? First thing, check the factors. Second thing, you isolate the variable, okay? So look at C. How many factors are there? Selena?
2,
2. Okay, very good. Which 2?
the 2x subtract 1, y, and then 3x squared subtract 9y.
Yes. And one more question for you. Okay, what do you think is different from A and B?
There's 2 brackets.
Yeah, 2 brackets. Yeah, that's not the biggest difference.
Oh, like there's an x and a y.
Mm-hmm.
It-
In the
in each factor.
yes, very good. Okay, so that's the biggest difference. If you look at before, okay, you have like for question A, you have 4 factors, right? And then okay, but you look at the 3 factors behind it. Each factor only has 1 letter, right? Only has 1 letter. Okay, now over here, you also have 3 factors. We ignore the 3, but then in each factor, you only has 1 variable, right? Only has x. The other bracket only has x. So the difference now is in the factor, just 1 factor, it has more than 1 variable. Okay, so we'll do the first step. Okay, each factor, we'll write it out. X2x minus y, that's our first factor. Same thing, okay, cannot be 0. And then 3x squared minus 9y, this is our second factor, also cannot be 0. So now you have 2 variables, right? If it's 2 variables, then you isolate only one of them. Okay, so you can write that down. Only isolate one variable. But which one should we isolate? So if it's x and y, we would isolate x. Okay, if it's a and b, we isolate a. So it's you isolate the first one in alphabetical order. Okay, the first in order. So if it's m and n, you isolate m. Okay, PQ, you will isolate P. Okay, PQRST, right? So you just isolate the one comes first. So for this one, we'll isolate the X. Okay, isolate the X. And same thing with this, you'll try to isolate the X. So that means your restriction will have X cannot equal to something Y. Okay, you will have variable instead of just numbers. So let you try now, okay? So isolate the x from both factors, okay? When you're finished, raise your hand and we'll check your answers, okay? Okay, we have 5 people finished now. Does anyone have questions? Okay, 8 people. 10 now. Okay, let's go over one of them, okay? Amanda, what's your answer from the first fact?
I got x does not equal y over 2.
Okay, thank you. And can I have Chris? What's your answer for the second one, second factor?
X squared is not equal to
Can you speak up one more time?
x squared does not equal to 3y.
X squared cannot equal to 3y, like that?
Yeah.
But you need to isolate x, right? So like, for example, like if you see an x squared, right? Like, let me see here. Question 1a at the bottom, right? X squared. If you have x squared cannot equal to 0, you still need to get rid of the square. You know how to get rid of square?
Use square root.
Yeah, so what would you say?
X equals to the square root of 3y.
So x cannot equal. Remember, it's not equal. Okay, so
Yeah.
square root of 3y. Okay. Anyone else has different or want to add to the answer? Is that all? Anybody? Everyone got the same? Elaine, what do you think?
I got the same.
Okay. Does anyone want to add to the answer? Is that all the answer? We got all the restrictions? No one? Are we missing something? Are we forgetting something? We've learned about quadratic equations, right? Think about complete square. Think about isolate variables. I'm trying to give you a hint. What are we forgetting? How do we isolate variables? Anybody? What are we missing here? Serena?
Like the end answer.
Yeah, the end answer. Yeah, what about it?
Like
Are we
y,
forgetting something? Yeah.
y over 2 and root 3y does not equal to x.
Yes, that's what we got so far, right? We got those two. But what else are we missing? There should be another restrictions.
Is it plus negative square root of 3y?
Yes, very good. Thank you so much. Okay, everybody remember, right? When you square root a square, okay, it's in book 1, okay? Let me quickly pull it up. Okay, it's very important, okay? Because you guys know this. Where is it? Okay, book 1, quadratic equation, right? It's right after functions. When we learn over here. This, right? This is called inequality. Here, right? Okay. Isolate variable. Book 1, okay? Isolate variable, and that's what we are doing, right? We're trying to isolate x. So look at the example here. You have a square. So if you square root on both sides, remember you need to have plus minus. Okay. Oops. I think I opened too many programs, so it got crashed. Too many page.